Sweet. All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Ethan Arrowood, and here today we're going to talk about how to ship a registry when nobody wants to run one. So the problem that we were solving is back in September of 2022, we were seeing a lot of new JavaScript runtimes coming about. And there is this need to say you have one package, but you wanted to target multiple runtimes, say Node or Deno or Bun or anything else. And there were fields already inside of package.json for this purpose, like the exports and engines fields. And they had keywords like Node already included, where you could specify the version of Node that your package supported or the version range. And we wanted to figure out what if we could expand that to other runtimes. So a month later, at the time, the WinterCG, we were a W3C community group at that point. We came up with the runtime keys proposal. And this proposal looked, this was actually a rendering I pulled of the original source, and you can see kind of the list of runtimes or environments that we included at first. And you can see there we had things like Node, but also things like Electron or Cloudflare Workerd, where it was like some kind of JavaScript environment that's not necessarily just Node.js, even though a lot of them had overlap with it. And the way this registry thing worked was basically everything was just tracked into a document. You could see there the sections were the names of the keys, and you made updates by simply making a PR to the document. And the WinterCG group at the time, whenever we would meet, we would approve those PRs and land those changes. And then you were added or removed or updated to this registry simply through a normal contribution process. Fast forward a few years, January 2025, the WinterCG joined Ecma and became the WinterTC or TC55. But there was a question at the time of what exactly were we going to do with the runtime keys proposal. It was considered out of scope because no other WinterTC normatively referenced those keys, at least not yet. But we still believed it to be a valuable resource. So we didn't just want to throw it away. We didn't just want to archive it or abandon it. So we had to kind of figure out, what were we going to do? This really didn't fit into more of a more standard document process. So we considered this group called the OpenJS Foundation Package Metadata Interoperability Working Group. I happen to also be responsible for this group. And in the quote here, you can see the goal of this group is to improve how JavaScript developers define their packages across the ecosystem. Pretty general, pretty generic. And the things that this group focused on, at least on the OpenJS Foundation side, were things like adding the dev engines field to package.json or exploring the interoperability of something like package.json between all of these different JavaScript runtimes, Node, Bun, etc. And this group was simply a working group as part of the OpenJS Foundation, so not a formal standards body by any means, no necessarily power to create a standard or a proposal of like that, but could, in theory, run a informal registry of keys akin to that of browser list, if you're familiar with it. And then we went to the other side of the spectrum of what if we considered IANA, like the de facto, registry standards body. But this, when I started going down this pathway, IANA is not simple. And again, we were thinking of this registry list. It's like it was not even normally referenced yet. It wasn't massively adopted. Why put all of this effort into some very complicated process for running a registry? Is there something else somewhere in the middle? And the question was, what if Ecma could do this? And that is where Aki.
So many words, I'm so sorry.
Aki shared the lovely idea of utilizing an Ecma Technical Report. And this happened about July of 2025. And that is where I will hand off to her to dive in.
Okay, so a lot of you know what a standard is. A lot of you don't actually know what a standard is. It's just a word, and that's kind of fine. But if you're curious, so a lot of you know Ecma 262, aka the ECMAScript language specification. You probably know it looking like this, which is the HTML version, but it does have to be published whenever the committee decides, but annually, as a full PDF that's like 850 pages long. If you're ever curious, I work a lot on the formatting, so I would love it if you just checked it out and thought it was great. So this is what a standard looks like in a really formal setting. This is recognized by ISO as an international standard for JavaScript. And in addition to having standards, Ecma publishes technical reports. And technical reports, such as the Ecma 262 test suite, tend to be instructional or explanatory, providing information. They are non-normative, which is a word I hear people use wrong all the time, and that's fine, because again, for a lot of people, it doesn't really matter. But if you're curious, normative has a special meaning because if you have a formal standard, the normative pieces are what you claim that you are implementing. So you follow the standard, you follow the normative content, and then you have something that implements the standard. As I mentioned the CRA earlier, that the standards that go along with the CRA, they provide a presumption of conformity with the law. So understanding the normative bits and what normative means is relevant here because it is the meat of the document. But technical reports are non-normative. Nobody is going to take a technical report and say, I implemented it, and therefore I'm compliant. Because compliant with what? But they are useful documents. And so when we were trying to figure out how to maintain this information without having to run a formal registry, because that sounds hard. I talked to people at IANA, they agree, it's hard. We came up with this pitch to the Ecma Executive Committee on how TC55 was going to run a registry, which is utilizing a JSON blob in Git as a single source of truth. This is the core. This is what the content is, but then producing it in a manner that allows people to consume it kind of wherever they're at. So, machine readable source is the JSON. Making sure that we have annex information. That the normative thing is really funny here. This is not my slide. This is somebody else's slide from the executive committee. So structured in a way that if we decided to deprecate some keys, we would have a place to put them, that people could track that information. Automating the publication, making sure that drafts are always marked as draft, because if this is going to be a formal document from Ecma, it needs to be approved by the General Assembly every time it's produced, so presumably twice a year. So the goal was we'll have perhaps a branch called draft that is the main branch, and you open your pull request on the draft branch, and then every 6 months we cut a tag and produce the pretty PDF version and then submit that to the General Assembly for approval. And then, of course, mirror it to a Git service in Switzerland because tech sovereignty. So we have the runtime keys technical report. It looks like that if it's not in PDF form. Do you want to talk about sort of the technical process?
Sure, I can jump in. Cool. So this is a quick snapshot of what it looks like today. We have some links at the bottom so you can actually see what the process was like for us setting this up for the first time, as well as where it lives live now. And then this is, as Aki was just saying, the whole governance and modification process as it stands today is we're using Git or PRs to create and modify the keys just like we were before. The committee approves these on at meetings, so there is that loosely formal process of approval, but also it gives us the chance to look at them offline first, and then, or asynchronously first, and then on the call that we have every 2 weeks or so, we can actually approve those edits into that draft. The draft then can reflect the decisions immediately, and people can start in a way, not necessarily implementing the draft, because there's not really anything to implement here, but they could start referencing the draft, again, in their tools, in their developer tools, as soon as something gets added. And yet, of course, they can state that maybe that's experimental, or maybe that's not, that'll go into the next major version of their dev tool that aligns with the actual publication of this report. And then, again, that report is formally published twice annually at the Ecma General Assembly. And then at the end here, this is an example of some of our annex pieces, and this is the JSON schema that we're using for this data. And this was actually a really exciting piece, because while the JSON itself is not necessarily a part of the technical report, it's not directly copy pasted inside of the report itself. It's what's used to generate the report. And so again, from a developer standpoint, you can use that too. It's tracked in the GitHub alongside the report. You can pull that JSON in. You can build your dev tooling around it. You could do so with any commit version that will obviously not change, and things with the draft branch and all of that, you can reference that as soon as it's available. And so this really just found a very nice sweet spot between that formality of the standardization process and the flexibility of what developers often seek for practical use cases. And I think that's all we have for today. So thank you. Does anyone have any questions?
Okay, so I've already actually gotten one question today that I don't know if the person who asked it's in the room, so I'm just going to ask it for them, which is, wait, but how can I actually use it? It is on GitHub, so the actual JSON blobs you can access directly from GitHub. Thanks, GitHub, for the free hosting! Yay!
Go open source. Alrighty.
Oh, looks like we did a great job explaining
Oh,
it.
we have one.
Sorry, it's not a question, it's a comment.
Perfect.
My experience with standard bodies is a lot of bureaucracy and having to explain to people how tech things work, because people know how to do standards but not how to use the technology. It's very cool here to see that the opposite is happening, and that there is this very the way developers do their work today, it's actually being ported into how we build a technical report, rather than trying to force developers to follow whatever practices we normally have for standards.
Thank you. And also, I think I need to really give a tip of the hat to Samina Hussain, who's the Secretary General of Ecma, not a JavaScript programmer. This was her idea, really. I mean, she's the one who nudged us toward thinking about a technical report and how we could utilize a technical report as the source of this information and this knowledge. So, I mean, she didn't really have the whole use CD in order to grab the JSON and generate the report. But the basic idea, the basic framing of what about a technical report was actually Samina's idea. So hats off to her.
Yeah, it was also fun to build a standard or a technical report that is generated from something. It's fun to actually build instead of just author all the time. There's actually a build script involved, a build steps and templating, and it's simple, but it's nice to see that kind of natural developer tendencies of coming through a standard body, when oftentimes, yes, you're more just writing things all the time instead of actually coding. So
I feel like I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that's kind of Ecma's thing, is letting people author standards in whatever format they're
most comfortable
accustomed to. So,
yeah.
There are some that use Word docs, but not required.
Absolutely. All right. Well, there's no questions. Thank you again.
Thanks, everyone.